Sometimes communication breaks down because children can't fully access language. It may be a hearing loss. It may be difficulty processing the information they hear. Maybe it's a speech delay, or simply not yet having the words they need. In today's episode, we're exploring how access impacts communication and why one surprisingly powerful tool can help many children, not just those who are deaf or hard of hearing. And that tool is signs. We are continuing our series titled When Communication is Hard. Today's special guest will talk about how signs reduce frustration, build connection, and give children more ways to communicate. Does your child have a speech-language delay and you really want them to talk? Do difficult behaviors derail home life and you know the frustration is a communication struggle? Does your child see a speech therapist and you wonder, what do they do and how can I help? If these or similar questions are in your mind, this podcast is for you. Hello, my name is Dinalynn Rosenbusch. I am a speech-language pathologist that has worked with children from birth to 21 for 3 decades. And in my classrooms, I see you wanting to connect with the heart of your child, but their speech and language skills create a barrier. So if you have a kiddo that has difficult behaviors, needs to expand their language or learn to say speech sounds, and maybe even receives speech therapy, stay tuned, because in this podcast, you will learn how to use your daily life as a tool to communication practice and how to do that practice. You will become confident knowing you are making the difference you want to make. And you will hear success stories of parents who have navigated these struggles already. We'll do this all while focusing on building deep, meaningful connection and confidence in your kiddo. So grab a cup of coffee along with a notebook and pen. It's time to speak in the way your child's brain understands. And that is the language of play. Welcome back. We are continuing our series, When Communication is Hard. And before we get started in today's episode, I do have a couple of announcements. For those of you that are still considering signing up for the group coaching for this summer, you still can. The recordings for past groups will be available to you, so you can get caught up. Check the link in the show notes, and I would be happy to have you join us this summer. Now I have a word from our sponsor, Clever Ellie. Have you ever driven somewhere and suddenly realized you forgot the very thing you left home to do? Maybe you went to the second stop on your list before the first. We've all experienced moments like that. What many people don't realize is that is the same human brain process that can sometimes lead a loving parent to forget a child in the back seat. That's why Clever Ellie was created. It's a simple car charger that plugs into your vehicle, and when you turn off the car, it gives a voice reminder, check the back seat. It's a simple habit that could make a life-saving difference. To learn more, follow the link in the show notes. The Language of Play listeners can also receive a free charging cable with their purchase. Now I'd like to share a free resource from my friend, Sarah Lascano. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things for your health, trying supplements, following recommendations, making lifestyle changes, and yet something still feels off, this might be worth exploring. Sarah teaches what she calls the inner signal, the idea that sometimes our bodies are carrying stress and tension in ways we don't fully recognize. Her free guide is called Heal Faster, Live Freer, Identify and Clear the Energetic Roots of Symptoms. If you're curious and want to learn more, you'll find that link in the show notes as well to get her free guide. Next, I have a financial resource. My work focuses on helping families thrive through communication and connection. But financial stress impacts family life too. Parents carry so much on their shoulders, and money worries can add a layer of stress that's hard to shake. That's why I'm partnering with my friend and my financial educator, Penelope Jane Smith. She has provided a free guide to help you create more clarity and security and confidence around money in simple, practical steps. And this means you can ditch the worry and the overwhelm and become more confident, knowing what to do and how to do it with your finances. The link for her free financial guide ebook is found in the show notes as well. There are so many resources that we need when we are raising our kids and building a life and building a family. I very much love it when I have real solid resources that I can give you. I know Sarah and Penelope personally, and I know their work is sound. The product of Clever Ellie is so intelligent and so simple that I love that for you as well. Now that's it for my announcements today, so let's get into the topic of today's episode. Today we're talking about something we don't always think about particularly, and that is access. Communication becomes difficult when a person cannot fully access language. Sometimes the challenge is getting language in. We call that receptive language. Other times the challenge is getting language out. We call that expressive language. And when language can't move freely in either direction, communication is hard. A child may struggle to get language in receptively because of maybe hearing loss or auditory processing challenges. Maybe it's a comprehension difficulty. Maybe it's limited vocabulary. Maybe it's a dual language. Or maybe it's simply because the words being used are beyond their developmental knowledge level. And when we think about a child struggling to get language out, and that's the expressive language, it could be difficult because of speech delays, motor speech disorders, limited vocabulary, maybe autism with limited verbal communication. Maybe it's selective mutism like we talked about in the last episode. Maybe it's a fluency difficulty, or because they simply don't yet have the words to express what they're thinking and feeling. Many of these topics have already been explored throughout this series. The next area we will specifically discuss is hearing impairment. And I had intended to discuss fluency during our episode on anxiety and selective mutism, but I became so focused on the selective mutism that fluency never received the attention it deserved. Many of the same struggles that we discussed in that episode still apply to children experiencing fluency challenges, such as stuttering. Today, however, we are going to narrow our focus to hearing impairment, hearing loss, or hard of hearing, whichever term you prefer. Most children learn spoken language because they hear thousands of words every day. They overhear conversations, they listen to stories, follow directions, and absorb the rhythm and cadence and the patterns of language throughout everyday interaction. They hear tone, they hear changes in tone, they respond to that tone, and they watch other people respond. When hearing is reduced, access to that language is reduced as well. And the language isn't only the words, it is the sounds and rhythm of language that also carries meaning, particularly in English. Sometimes this happens because sound is blocked from reaching our inner ear, such as if a child has fluid in their ear, or maybe repeated ear infections. We call this a conductive hearing loss. Other times, the hearing system itself is affected. The inner ear, or hearing nerve, may not be receiving or sending sound signals clearly to the brain. This is called a sensory neural hearing loss. In both situations, children may miss pieces of language that most of us take for granted. A child does not have to be completely deaf to experience communication challenges. Even mild or fluctuating hearing loss. Now, fluctuating means that maybe fluid comes and goes. The child is most of the time or some of the time hearing fully and other times not. So when hearing loss is fluctuating, you have the same experience, meaning word endings are missing. Soft sounds are missing. Details in conversations are missing. The child misses pieces of instruction and information. It would be like trying to learn a language while parts of every sentence disappear. Communication challenges are often misunderstood, and it's easy to assume that a child is not paying attention because that's what it looks like. It looks like not listening or choosing not to respond. But in reality, your child might not have heard enough information to understand what was expected. Maybe this is due to hearing. Maybe it's due to processing time. Maybe something else. But in this case, the issue is access, not willingness. And the tricky part is we don't always know when hearing fluctuates, and neither does your child. They don't know when they are missing things, and neither do you. So if your child is a child that has had fluid in their ears or ear infections, always assume that that is a possibility that that's going on. If your child has been swimming recently, it's a possibility. If they have a stuffy nose or change of seasons and maybe there's some allergies, there are lots of times that fluctuation can pop into our life. And that is when access to language is limited. And it often shows up as behavior. At least that's what it looks like. And it reinforces the appearance of willful noncompliance, or maybe low IQ, or maybe lack of attention, or whatever label we put on that behavior. But the encouraging news is that access can be improved, and whether that's through hearing aids, cochlear implants, visual supports, sign language, or other communication systems, increasing access gives children greater opportunities to understand language. With all that in mind, I decided to invite a guest today to talk with us about these situations with hearing loss, because she is able to use one of the most powerful things to provide another pathway to language. And that is where sign language comes in. Many people think of sign language only in relation to hearing loss. And certainly it can be a critical support for children who are deaf or hard of hearing. But signs can also support communication for lots and lots of other kids. The reason is because signs can make language visible. When we provide another way to understand language, another way to express our thoughts, our needs, and our ideas, when spoken words aren't yet available, these children have access that they didn't otherwise have. A visual language gives support when the verbal part or the auditory part is struggling. And if you remember from earlier episodes, there are ways that we go offline. So for children who are overwhelmed or delayed or difficult to understand, or maybe the child is learning more than one language, or maybe they're just developing communication skills at the get-go, signs can reduce frustration. And when we reduce frustration, we increase trust and we increase connection. And all of that supports language growth. And that is why I invited Tracie to join us today. Tracie teaches sign language with children from birth to 5 and has spent decades helping families discover how signs can open the doors to communication, to understanding, and to connection. And in our conversation, she'll share how sign language can support language development for all kinds of children, not just those with hearing loss. So let me introduce her properly. Today, I am joined by my personal friend, Tracie Rieder. She is the owner of Circle of Friends Signing School and a parent coach through Timeout Behavior Coaching. Tracie spent 23 years as a family child care provider, supporting young children and their families through the joys and challenges of early childhood. Prior to that, she worked as a licensed elementary teacher and teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, with primary focus on children from birth through the early elementary years. As the mother of 3 grown children, Tracie brings both professional expertise and personal insights to her work in Southeast Minnesota. Welcome, Tracie. I am so glad you came here today to be with me on The Language of Play. I especially wanted you to come on because you have worked with lots and lots of kids that you're using sign language with, whether or not they are deaf or hard of hearing. And you have seen the benefits firsthand because of your work both as a daycare provider and in your work as a deaf and hard of hearing teacher. Can you tell us a little bit about where you began and how you discovered this power that sign language has for language development?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. Yes, I think it was a slower process than it was like a light bulb, I guess. I enjoyed learning sign language I just kind of learned on my own back in elementary and high school a little bit. Did a special project when I was in college where I volunteered with a deaf and hard of hearing resource room in elementary school, and just kind of fell in love with the language at that point. And so little opportunities just came up over the next few years, and then I eventually got my master's in deaf and hard of hearing. And I think through my work as a deaf and hard of hearing teacher, where I focused primarily with the birth to 3 and the pre-K population, I just was fascinated by it. But then at that point, I went into family childcare when I started having my own children. So I used it with my kids and I used it in my program. Um, not extensively at first, but as the years went on and I figured out some little systems to get it involved in my program and to just remember to use the signs and to make it more meaningful in my daily routines, then I used it a lot more. And I just noticed that kids seem to really enjoy it and pick it up very quickly. And I noticed that it actually seemed to be once they were signing that was when the speech picked up, which I thought was very interesting. And I just found it helpful.
I love that you say that when they were signing, their speech picked up, because that certainly is what I see as a speech language pathologist too, is that when we give these external supports, then what we're trying to get comes faster.
Yes,
As
exactly.
you were doing childcare, I bet you came across a lot of families that had different misconceptions or ideas about signing with their kids. What did you come across that you thought, no, moms and dads, that's not quite how it works because it's surprisingly different?
Honestly, when in my years as a childcare provider, I did not really come across that too much. I really felt that parents bought in very quickly, maybe because of my background. Um, they just seemed to when earlier years, when I was going to school to be a teacher for deaf and hard of hearing, or early on as a teacher for deaf and hard of hearing, as I met different people from programs that focused more on just speech and hearing training and didn't use as much sign language, there I just came across more people, and honestly, sometimes at that time, because it was a lot of years ago, the medical people in the medical profession tended to discourage using sign language because they really felt that the speech wasn't going to come along as well or as quickly. But granted, this was quite a few years ago. But I just happened to notice myself in so many situations that kids that didn't have a lot of speech, once the language started to become established through sign, it was just as if the stressors came down. They were more relaxed, and who can really learn a new skill when they're under that kind of stress anyway? So it took away all the stress and the anxiety, and they could communicate, and then the speech came because they were more relaxed.
I love that. I love that. In my field, I do come across parents that are concerned, oh, if I teach my child signs, they're not going to talk because signs will be easier. And that is not what the research nor the experience tells us. It is exactly what you say, which is it's like putting an engine behind the growth. The signs seem to give somebody a runway to be able to get to their speech. So I love that you bring that up. It's so important for people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're teaching sign, I know that in your program, you do it especially a lot with music. Can you tell us how come and the power of that?
Yes, I think music just helps things stick in the kid's mind. I mean, when you think about well, my kids at age, I don't know, 16, 18 months, we're starting to sing their ABCs. I mean, the alphabet didn't mean that much to them. They don't understand the symbols, but yet they know all the 26 letters in order. And it's just because the music sticks in their mind. And I think anytime you put things to music, it makes it easier to remember. And especially pairing the music with the the movement that goes with sign language or some of the other activities that I do. Anytime it's a multimodal learning experience, kids get more from that. And I think you see better results.
Yeah, they pick it up faster and more solid. So, can you tell us a
Mhm.
story about somebody who just wasn't communicating? They were frustrated, and the social emotional piece is messy because they're little kids. They're all a little bit messy.
Mhm.
But yet, when you introduce signs and you're able to put them into song, and you can teach them lessons then using sign and song, things change. Things change more rapidly. Can you tell us a story that you have experienced where sign has made the difference?
Oh my goodness. Well, I honestly can't think of a story that where it was a situation that a child was terribly frustrated. And it might be because I just incorporated sign all the time with my kids anyway. So they kind of had that outlet. I thought it was interesting that all kids seem to enjoy it, but some kids very much just they might be more visual learners. Some kids just gravitate toward the sign in the beginning and they just seem like little sponges trying to observe every time I'm signing things and we'll pick things up and just random things. I imagine, I think about one of the little boys I had one of the last years I was in childcare who was probably 13 or 14 months old and didn't have a lot of words yet. And at that time, they don't always, but the signing was clicking for him. So words like jack o' lantern, he loved the sign for jack o' lantern and he was very enthralled with everything Halloween was a big one. And then I don't remember what all of his signs were, but the one that stuck out to me was that when he was about that age, I was feeding a bottle and he kept putting the shape toys in the shapes in the ball toy so they would get stuck and then he would look at me and just kind of grunt because he wanted me to help get them out, but I was feeding a baby a bottle in a chair and I couldn't help him, so I just signed stuck for him, which is just holding up two fingers like you're counting to two, but having your palm face you and you just put them on your neck.
Oh,
There you go. Yes, that's how you do stuck. Um, and
like something
he
stuck in
just
your throat, like a fork.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And he just really looked at me and like the wheels were spinning. And then he started putting the wrong thing in the wrong toy all over my playroom and looking at me and signing stuck. And when he did it, it was all of his fingers at his throat, not just two. But just like babies will say ba before they say bottle, that was his baby talk for stuck. But I just thought it was great that such random things like jack-o'-lantern and stuck are the things he's learning because he had access to sign and he wouldn't have been able to say them. And it wasn't even just a vocabulary word, it was a concept that he was getting um, as he was getting things stuck all around my playroom. So I thought that was pretty special.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think most of the time people think of more and all done as like the
Right.
anchor signs that if anybody's going to learn signs, they learn those too and then sometimes stop. But richer signs
Hmm.
like jack-o'-lantern and stuck are fabulous uses of sign support in language. And I love how that expands a kiddo's understanding.
Hmm.
Now, now in your business, you are going to other people's homes, other childcare providers' homes, and you're
Hmm.
teaching them how to use sign. Where do you begin when you go into those settings or when you're in a classroom?
Um, I begin with whatever theme it is that I might be working on at the time. And I usually rotate themes throughout the year. They usually have to do something with either the weather or the season or different holidays that are going on. But I usually focus on a theme for about a month, and um, yeah, and just depending on how many times I go into the classroom, sometimes I can add some extra things just based on what the interest of the kids are there.
Now, if you were to be talking to a parent, and let's say a parent is thinking, I wonder how I could use sign with my kids, what would be maybe the first 5 signs that they'd start with? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell a story. When my kids were young, probably the most helpful sign was telling them to come. And the way I did it was, and I know that there's different synonyms for signs, but I did like circle it around like gather and then pull it to me. And it would be like a scooping with my hands and then yank it towards me, thumb towards me. That sign my kids learned for it's time to gather your things, whatever you're doing, it's time to come or it's time to leave, because I would say come or I'd say go. I suppose it would be the sign gather go and gather come. We could talk to each other across a playground or across a church building. It didn't matter if they'd scatter from me, because all I'd have to do is wave my hand, they'd notice, and then I'd sign it and they'd be like, oh, I need to go. Mm-hmm. That was one of our best signs. Like, we used a lot of them when I raised my kids, but that was probably one of the most powerful ones for me. As long as they could see me, we could communicate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of my favorites with my childcare was wait.
Oh, yes.
Just because kids have, a hard time waiting. And I had a lot of toddlers, and they always wanted to, be first to get up into the high chair for snack, or first to go wash their hands, or so I just started signing wait. Do you know the sign for wait, where you just have your palms up and you wiggle your fingers? Yep. So it's very easy. And we would just sing I'm waiting for my turn. I'm waiting for my turn. I'm learning to be patient. I'm waiting for my turn. And just that totally took care of the issue. Because the music brings them in, and the motions are something that they can do, and that one really stuck for them, and helped take care of the whining, crying that might happen when it's hard to wait your turn. But yeah, and I've had stories from childcare providers too, kind of like that. I know one provider that has an outdoor program, and her kids, because she has such a large play space in the backyard, she felt like when she needed to get somebody's attention, especially if they were doing something that was maybe borderline unsafe, and she wanted to get their attention, she felt like she needed to yell, and she didn't like yelling at them. Even though she was outside and it's a situation that makes sense, she always had little ones around her as well, and it came off like she was yelling at somebody. So she said if they were doing something mischievous, they would tend to turn around and look at her. So she kind of had their attention anyway, and she always signed to them. And then she didn't have to say a word. They knew what she was saying because she could communicate across the distance. And the little ones around her feet did not feel like she was having to yell. And she said that worked really well for her, that whenever kids are getting a little wild, a little rambunctious, just turning her voice off and using the signs instead. And they thought the sign language classes were fun. So it was almost like a game, but also effectively redirecting a behavior.
What absolutely fantastic way to deal with the birth to 3 or birth to 4, birth to 5, whatever it is, population.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. All right, well, we have reached the end of our time. So Tracie, before you go, I would like you to say 2 things. One, I would like you to speak to the mom or dad. Let's say they're listening to this and they're driving a car and they are thinking, I want one sign. What one sign would you say? Learn this one. Is it wait?
Maybe it would be wait. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Or if
at that age.
The nice thing too is that there really are lots of ways. I mean, it's very easy to go on Google and say ASL for the word, and then put the word in, and videos will pop up. So if you have an issue that you're having that you feel like keeps coming up, or a word that's just your child is just fascinated with and interested in, you can look that up.
And ASL, listeners, means American Sign Language.
Yes.
Tracie, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you if they would like to learn more from you. And listeners, Tracie's fabulous. She does an amazing job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, my website is cfsigning.com. So it stands for Circle of Friends. That's the business name, Circle of Friends Signing School. So cfsigning.com, or you can just look for it on Facebook or Instagram as well.
I love it. And listeners, we'll have that link in the show notes. Tracie's work is so supportive. And like we talked at the beginning, giving sign to your kiddos is like giving them a runway towards getting speech. It is not something that relegates speech to the back seat, but rather it provides that runway. If you want to learn more about how language grows from signs and how to do it so that your child will gain more speech using sign as a bridge to speaking, contact me. And if you have a daycare, a classroom, or even you are a parent and you'd like your children to get sign instruction, contact Tracie. There's a lot of overlap in what Tracie and I do. So if you're curious, you can contact either one of us and we will be able to determine in a conversation who is the best fit for your needs. See the show notes for all contact information. Thank you again to our amazing sponsors who support families so well. Clever Ellie, the car charger that talks to you, Raisin Energy, your free guide to identify causes of symptoms, and that was Sarah Lascano. And then Penelope with Real Prosperity Inc., your free guide towards financial freedom. All links are in the show notes below. And remember, I'm always cheering you on. Hey parents, I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who also lives or works with children? I would really appreciate it if you would leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. I read every review and it lights me up to know that this show is making a difference. Then come join my Facebook community, where you'll meet other parents who are dedicated to helping their children grow too. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to go. Let's pop our kiddos in the strollers and go look around outdoors and see what we have to talk about.